You've probably noticed something strange about yourself. You can walk into a room and feel the temperature of people's emotions before anyone even speaks. You pick up tension the way others pick up Wi-Fi signals. But here's the twist. That sensitivity, that sixth sense, it comes with an invisible price. INFJs, the rarest of the 16 types, don't just lose energy from noise, crowds, or chaos. They lose it from meaninglessness. Every interaction, every piece of information, every vibration around them is either charging their soul or draining it dry. Over time, INFJs begin to notice patterns, 7 invisible energy traps they instinctively sidestep to survive, not out of fear, but because they know, deep down, that peace is their life blood. And once you see these traps clearly, you'll understand why INFJs disappear, withdraw, or suddenly go silent. Not because they're weak, but because they've evolved. Let's dive right in. All right, first on the list, the trap of overfixing broken people. You've always been drawn to people in pain. It's not pity, it's recognition. You can feel their wounds before they speak them, and something in you whispers, maybe I can help. It's the classic INFJ reflex to rush toward brokenness with open arms, believing your empathy can be the glue that holds someone together. But what you eventually discover is that healing others is not the same as saving them. You start to notice a pattern. The more you give, the emptier you feel. You listen, you comfort, you guide, but they don't change. They take your light, not because they're evil, but because they're addicted to the attention of being fixed. You start realizing that some people don't want healing. They want witnesses to their chaos. They want an audience, not a way out. And that's when it hits you. Trying to save someone who isn't ready is like trying to swim for two. You both drown. INFJs. Learn this lesson through heartbreak, not logic. You stay up late replaying every word, asking yourself if you should have cared less or loved more. You feel guilty for walking away, as if leaving someone toxic makes you the villain. But over time, you start to see that compassion without boundaries is self-destruction, disguised as kindness. You can't pour light into a cup with no bottom. The shift happens quietly. One day, you stop showing up for people who never show up for themselves. You stop mistaking codependency for connection. You start to understand that the real healer doesn't rescue. They reflect. They hold up a mirror so others can see their own power. And sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is to let them face their darkness alone. That's why INFJs walk away. Not because they've stopped caring, but because they finally understand the difference between empathy and enmeshment. They realize that saving people from their own lessons steals the very pain that could have transformed them. And when you grasp that, you no longer apologize for protecting your peace. You don't stop loving people, you just stop doing their inner work for them. It's not coldness, it's clarity. And clarity is the first real act of self-love an INFJ ever learns. And next up, we've got the trap of forced positivity. You've always been told to look on the bright side, to stay grateful, to keep smiling no matter what. But for an INFJ, that advice feels hollow, because you don't just feel emotions, you absorb them. You can't fake light when your soul is sitting in the dark, and you've tried. You've worn the cheerful mask, nodded along with the motivational cliches, whispered affirmations that didn't feel real, but deep down, you knew. Suppressing your shadow doesn't make it disappear. It just buries it deeper until it starts to rot. INFJs eventually realize that toxic positivity is emotional censorship. It tells you that certain feelings are bad, that sadness is weakness, that anger is unspiritual. But what if the opposite is true? What if your emotions aren't enemies, but messages? That sadness isn't failure. It's feedback. It's your body saying, something here is not aligned. So you stop forcing yourself to glow when you're clearly burning out. You let the storm pass through instead of pretending the sky is always blue. In that stillness, you start to see the beauty of your own depth. While the world scrolls past pain, you sit with it. You listen. You let it teach you. You start to understand that light isn't the absence of darkness. It's what's born from facing it. You stop chasing constant joy and start valuing emotional honesty. You begin to treat your sadness the way a monk treats silence, as sacred space. People might call it being negative, but it's not negativity. It's authenticity. And authenticity is the oxygen of an INFJ's soul. You're not afraid of darkness anymore because you've realized something profound. Darkness is just light that's waiting to be understood. When you integrate it, when you let yourself feel fully, you become whole again. So now instead of saying, I'm fine, when you're breaking, you say, I'm processing. Instead of forcing a smile, you give yourself permission to rest, to cry, to be human. Because real positivity doesn't mean being happy all the time. It means trusting that even your pain has purpose. And once you learn that, you stop performing peace and start embodying it. And thirdly, the trap of social overexposure. You've probably felt it, that strange exhaustion after a day of being around too many people. It's not just physical tiredness. It's something deeper, almost spiritual, like your inner world has been overstimulated. That's because, as an INFJ, you don't just hear people, you tune into them. You pick up on tones, glances, tiny shifts in mood that others don't even notice. You're constantly decoding emotional data, and while that sensitivity is your superpower, it also comes with a cost. You start carrying the emotions that don't belong to you. For most people, social interaction is just noise and conversation. For you, it's absorption. Every word, every sigh, every hidden frustration clings to your energy like static electricity. By the end of the day, your emotional skin feels raw. You replay conversations in your mind, not because you're overthinking, but because you're subconsciously trying to cleanse what's not yours. That's why INFJs disappear sometimes. You don't hate people, you just need silence to detox. It's easy to misunderstand this retreat as avoidance. Friends might say, "You're so quiet lately," not realizing that your quiet is actually recovery. Solitude is how you recharge your psychic batteries. It's how you recenter after being submerged in the ocean of other people's emotions. When you're alone, you can finally hear your own inner voice. Again, clear, calm, and unfiltered. And that voice, it's the compass that keeps you aligned with who you really are. Over time, you start setting invisible boundaries around your energy. You become more selective about who you let close. You stop forcing conversations that feel shallow. Stop attending gatherings that leave you feeling hollow. You realize that solitude isn't loneliness. It's medicine. And every time you withdraw, you return more grounded, more intuitive, more you. INFJs don't ghost because they're cold. They ghost because they've absorbed too much frequency from too many people. You vanish, not to escape the world, but to remember where your energy ends and everyone else's begins. And when you return, rested, rebalanced, and reconnected to your inner calm, you don't feel guilty anymore. You realize something sacred. Retreat is not weakness. It's maintenance. It's the way you keep your soul from drowning in the noise. Fourthly, the trap of unrealistic ideals. You've always carried a vision in your mind, a world that could be, a relationship that should be, a version of yourself that's finally enough. It's the INFJ's silent addiction. Perfection disguised as purpose. You see the best in everything and everyone, and because you can see it so clearly, you start believing it's your responsibility to make it real. But that idealism, as beautiful as it is, can quietly drain you. Because when you live through the lens of how it should be, reality always feels like a disappointment. You notice yourself constantly comparing the world to the one in your head, the people around you to the potential you sense within them, the present moment, to the dream version you're always chasing. It's exhausting. You keep trying to perfect your life, your purpose, your relationships, until one day you realize you're not chasing happiness anymore. You're chasing control, and control is the enemy of peace. INFJs often learn this through heartbreak. You try to build a love that mirrors your soul, but people keep being people. Imperfect, messy, unpredictable. You pour yourself into causes that promise meaning only to discover corruption, ego, or indifference underneath. Every time your ideals collide with reality, you lose a piece of innocence and a bit of energy too. You start to wonder if the world will ever live up to the vision in your mind. But here's the turning point. When you stop expecting perfection, life starts breathing again. You begin to see beauty in imperfection, in the cracks, the flaws, the detours. You start to understand that maybe your role isn't to force the world into your vision, but to witness its becoming. You stop trying to make everything perfect and instead learn to find meaning in the imperfect. It's a humbling realization that the very imperfections you used to resent are the source of depth, growth, and soul. The brokenness you tried to fix becomes the canvas where authenticity blooms. You stop trying to paint a flawless picture and start letting the brushstrokes be human, and slowly your energy shifts. You find peace not by achieving the ideal, but by embracing the real. You understand that imperfection isn't failure, it's the universe reminding you that you're alive, evolving, learning. The moment you release the pressure for life to be perfect, you finally feel something better. Alignment. Because the INFJ's true power isn't creating a flawless world. It's seeing the divine meaning inside an imperfect one. Fifthly, the trap of people-pleasing is peacekeeping. You've spent much of your life as the emotional anchor for everyone else. You sense tension before it's spoken, conflict before it erupts, and without even thinking, you start smoothing it over, softening your words, swallowing your truth, because you believe keeping the peace is the same as creating harmony. But deep down, every INFJ eventually learns a painful truth. Keeping everyone else comfortable often means abandoning yourself. You've said it's fine when it wasn't. You've apologized for things that weren't your fault. You've smiled when you wanted to scream, stayed quiet when you wanted to cry, and agreed to things that drained you because you couldn't bear the thought of letting someone down. At first, people call you kind, patient, understanding, and you are. But there's a moment when kindness mutates into compliance. When your compassion becomes currency, people start spending without permission. That's when the inner fatigue begins. You wake up one day and realize your life is filled with yeses that were never honest. You're surrounded by peace, but it's artificial, built on your silence. It looks calm from the outside, but inside you feel resentful, invisible, and oddly disconnected from your own voice. That's when the INFJ begins to evolve. You start to see that saying yes to everyone else means saying no to yourself. You realize that boundaries are not punishments. They're acts of respect. A soft no can carry more love than a forced yes. It takes courage to disappoint people, but even more courage to keep disappointing yourself. So you stop apologizing for drawing lines. You stop cushioning people from the natural consequences of their behavior. You stop sacrificing authenticity for acceptance. And what's fascinating is how your energy begins to change. The moment you honor your own needs, the exhaustion starts to lift. You feel lighter, freer, more grounded in who you are. The same empathy that once made you a people pleaser becomes a compass, guiding you toward relationships where peace is shared, not performed. You learn that true harmony doesn't come from silence. It comes from honesty. So now, when someone crosses your boundary, you don't explain it for hours or soften it with guilt. You simply say, no, that doesn't work for me. You say it with calm certainty, no anger, no apology. because you finally understand something radical. Being kind to yourself is the most loving thing you can do for others. An evolved INFJ no longer confuses peacekeeping with people-pleasing. You've realized that real peace isn't the absence of conflict. It's the presence of truth. And once you start living from that truth, your energy stops leaking through false harmony. It becomes focused, fierce, and whole. 6 on the list, the trap of over-explaining yourself. You've probably spent years trying to make people understand you, explaining your moods, your distance, your silence, your boundaries, all because you couldn't stand being misunderstood. It's one of the most exhausting patterns INFJs fall into. You try to clarify your intentions, justify your choices, and translate the language of your heart into something others can accept. But here's the paradox. The more you explain yourself, the less people actually see you. You do it because you care. You want harmony, not conflict. You want people to know that your silence isn't rejection, that your boundaries aren't cruelty, that your solitude isn't sadness. But what you start to realize is that explanation is energy. Every word you spend defending your truth to the wrong person is a withdrawal from your emotional bank. And most of the time, the people demanding explanations don't want understanding, they want control. It's a subtle kind of manipulation. They twist your empathy against you. They make you believe that if you were just clearer, kinder, more patient, they'd finally get it. But no amount of explaining will convince someone who's committed to misunderstanding you. So you stop. You stop arguing with distorted perspectives. You stop justifying why you need space, why you said no, why you changed. You stop performing your truth for people who only listen to defend their comfort. The shift is quiet but powerful. You realize that the people who truly see you don't need the PowerPoint presentation version of your soul. They feel your intention. They trust your silence as much as your words. You no longer chase being understood. You curate who deserves access to your inner world. At first it feels unnatural. You'll feel that old urge rise up to explain, to smooth things over, to fix the misunderstanding. But then you remember, your peace is not up for debate. You start to embrace mystery, not as a wall, but as a filter. You let your energy speak louder than your explanations ever could. You learn that distance is not disconnection, it's discernment. And slowly, people's reactions stop defining your reality. You stop needing validation to feel valid. You begin to understand that your truth doesn't lose value just because someone else can't see it. The more you withhold your need to explain, the more power you reclaim. INFJs discover that silence can be a full sentence, that no can stand on its own. That understanding doesn't need to be negotiated. You stop pleading to be seen and start living as though you already are, because you finally realize your energy was never meant to be explained. It was meant to be felt. And seventhly, the trap of constant self-improvement. You've always been a seeker, curious, reflective, forever analyzing who you are and how to become better. It's the INFJ instinct to evolve. You read the books, take the courses, journal your breakthroughs, and dive into endless self-reflection loops. But somewhere along the way, you start to realize that this endless quest for growth has quietly turned into another form of self-rejection. You're no longer improving because you love yourself. You're improving because you think you're not enough yet. It's subtle at first. You convince yourself that healing is progress, that productivity equals worth. You build morning routines, gratitude lists, and self-discipline challenges until your personal development becomes another job. But the truth is, you can't meditate your way out of humanity. You can't affirm your way out of imperfection. There comes a point where self-improvement stops being expansion and starts being escape, a way to avoid stillness, a way to hide from the terrifying truth that you're already complete. For INFJs, this realization hits like a quiet revelation. You notice how you keep auditing your feelings as if joy needs permission. How every bad day turns into a project instead of a pause. You start to see that even your healing obsession is draining your energy, not because it's wrong, but because it's relentless. You've turned introspection into a treadmill, and no matter how fast you run, peace never comes closer. So you stop chasing, you start allowing. You learn that rest is not laziness, it's integration. You realize that the most profound healing happens when you stop trying to heal. You begin to trust the natural intelligence of your spirit to recalibrate on its own. Instead of forcing evolution, you allow it to unfold. And when you do, something magical happens. The pressure lifts. You stop viewing every flaw as a flaw and start seeing it as texture. You begin to love yourself without conditions, without deadlines. You start to understand that enlightenment isn't becoming something new. It's remembering what you already are. INFJs eventually learn that the goal isn't to perfect the self, it's to befriend it. Growth becomes gentler, quieter, less about climbing and more about deepening. You start asking softer questions. What if I'm already okay? What if peace isn't found in becoming better, but in being fully here? That's when transformation truly begins, not through more effort, but through surrender. Because the moment you stop treating yourself like a problem to solve, you finally become someone you can rest inside. Last, but not least, INFJs don't avoid energy traps, they transmute them. The irony is this: INFJs aren't running from the world. They're refining how they move through it. They've learned that every energy trap, from overgiving to overthinking, is really just an invitation to evolve. Where others see withdrawal, INFJs see alchemy. They don't just protect energy, they transform it. Pain becomes insight, isolation becomes clarity, and what once drained them now defines them. You've spent a lifetime feeling like your sensitivity was your weakness, but maybe it was always your greatest technology, the built-in compass pointing you toward truth, purpose, and peace. So the next time you feel yourself pulling away, don't apologize for it. You're not avoiding life. You're conserving the light you need to illuminate it. Because in a world obsessed with attention, INFJs remind us of something far rarer: the quiet power of protecting your own energy. That's it for today's deep dive into the hidden energy traps INFJs instinctively avoid. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Which of these resonated the most with you personally? Do you recognize any of these patterns in your own life? Or have you noticed different energy traps that I didn't mention? Share your thoughts, insights, or even your stories in the comments below. I always read them. If this video helped you see yourself a little more clearly, give it a like so it reaches more people who might need to hear this too. And if you enjoy content that blends psychology, personality, and emotional self-awareness, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. There's a lot more coming your way. Thanks for watching, take care of your energy, and I'll see you in the next one.